In a dark, scary forest, hidden within the hollow of an ancient, scary tree, 3 scary fairies and their fairy friend gather to discuss scary movies. This week's feature is a recent tale from 2025, entitled Grafted. Now, let's meet our fairy hosts and this week's guest.
I'm like a corpse flower because I'm one of a kind, beautiful, and I smell like I'm dying. I'm Evan.
I'm Matty. Some people say I'm two-faced, but they don't know about the third I keep in my fridge.
I may be fucking my professor, but in a face-off, I'm top of the class. I'm Hannah.
Imitation is the highest form of flattery, even when it's lethal. I'm Tristen.
And we're the Scary Fairies. Hello, fellow fairy friends, and welcome to the podcast. We have a very special episode for you this week because we have a new fairy joining us in the forest. Tristen, introduce yourself.
Hi, it's me. I'm Tristen. I'm a fairy. This is a forest. It's spooky.
Ooh. I love it. Yay, Tristen. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is definitely... it's exciting to be here and be part of the cast or part of the podcast. I'm not super into horror films, so this is like kind of exciting to like be able to talk about them with folks that are obsessed with them. So just happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, I don't think we're all obsessed. I think one of us here in particular is forced.
Yeah.
So you might fall into that camp.
Yeah. Good to have a friend.
I had no idea. This is a safe space.
By Matty.
Yeah. We'll dive into your history with horror in a little bit, Tristen. But first, Evan had a topic he wanted to discuss. Isn't that right, Evan?
Yeah. So this week, or semi-recently, there's something going around online that's kind of movie related, and also related to some things at least one of us really likes. A woman who enjoys to knit posted that she attended a movie that was pretty crowded, and she likes to knit while doing all sorts of activities to kind of keep her hands busy. So she brought her knitting along, and she was knitting, and the gentleman next to her got really annoyed and asked her to cut it out. And she was like half kind of offended, but half kind of like surprised that anybody would be distracted or react negatively to her. So she was asking kind of online, was I in the wrong? Knitting doesn't make a lot of sound to me. Should he have told me to stop? So I wanted to get your opinions, especially Hannah, who also likes to knit.
Well, nobody better piss me off. So
I'm gonna leave. No.
I have knitted in the theater. I don't need to look down at my knitting to make it go. So I normally feel like it's not super distracting, and it honestly helps me pay attention to the movie. I have ADHD, and so doing something with my hands like that really helps me to pay attention to the movie even better than I would if I wasn't knitting. But it's often kind of too, I don't need to see, but it's too dark, and a lot of the projects that I'm doing are too complicated to look at it. So to not look at it. And so I don't do it all the time. And I definitely don't do it when Matthew's there.
Well, I have no idea why you would say that.
Oh, you have no idea why I would say that?
No, none. Zero.
Because I don't want to hear about it later.
Oh, you'd hear about it then. You wouldn't hear about it later.
Oh, I was knitting during Terrifier, and you kept looking over at me, and I was like, and then I put it away. But
how passive aggressive of me.
I don't think you were meaning to be. Just yeah, absolutely.
I get easily distracted during movies.
Yeah.
When I saw Dune Part 2, there was a kid next to me who I didn't say anything to him because I thought he might have a tic that was an issue, but he kept flicking his fingers, and it was the most distracting thing ever. I couldn't pay attention in the movie. All I could do was look at his hand.
What was he wearing? Do you remember? I bet you remember.
No, I remember his hand. I remember what his hand looked like.
You're like, I wanted to fucking kill him.
But I think, Hannah will knit during trailers. But yeah, I guess it's just a me thing that she doesn't knit next to me during movies, which I appreciate. But I get too distracted. I'm also ADHD in a way that I want to pay attention to the movie, but I get easily distracted.
I just have questions around like what, because I mean, my partner knits. I think it's knitting and not crocheting. Like, what does that sound like? Like, does it make? Because I know there's some level of contact, right?
Yeah,
with things.
It depends on if you use wooden needles or metal needles. I think they make a small sound, but I don't think it's that loud. I wonder how she was knitting. Was she like pulling up her arm and like moving the everything around? Like, was she movie knitting? Because every time people knit in movies, it looks like the fakest shit I've ever seen in my entire life.
With her hands.
She's like, she was doing a little. She was hitting the Dougie with the knitting needles.
Because I think that's the problem. It's not the noise; it's the movement. So, like,
constant movement. Yeah.
If you're sitting right next to somebody, which I think in this scenario that we're talking about, somebody's sitting right next to her, especially if you don't know them, I would say don't do it.
I just have this thing about public spaces, right? And also culturally right now we're in this space where like everyone's like, I have a right to be annoyed about things. And like, so there's this question of, I guess, where does it land? Is it fair? Is it not fair? I think when you get into public spaces, people get way too comfortable and it's like, this is not your fucking living room. Like, this is a shared space. We all paid to be in this space. When I went to Hadestown, this woman wanted to like, she kept turning around and like looking at me. Because like I bumped her chair twice with my knee, and like I wasn't like right. I just kind of gave it a small little thing. Yeah. And she like stopped. She made a point of stopping, like turning around and looking annoyed. And I wanted to be like, "What, bitch? Like we're all stuck here. These seats suck. We're all in a space.
Those seats are
like
small,
manage yourself. Handle your shit and move on with your life. Like it is what it is."
Sure, I get it. I don't like I said, I don't do it with people who are very annoyed, and I often don't when people are right next to me. If it's a very crowded theater, I try not to. But I could, and I will.
and that's your right as an American.
And I feel that is my right as an American.
All right, well, now let's move on to a segment we like to call It Came from the Queue.
It came from the queue.
This is where we discuss the scary stuff we've been up to. Let's start with Evan.
Yeah, so my main thing this week, I've been reading a new book called Fantastic Land. It's not new. I think it's a couple years old, but new to me. Basically the concept of the book is it takes place in Florida at a big theme park that's very Disney World, Universal-esque. But it name checks both of those, so they exist in this universe. But it's basically a theme park that's kind of separated into areas that are themed, and a giant hurricane hits. And there's a bunch of cast members or employees that agree to stay behind to kind of watch the park and make sure it's not like destroyed or looted. So basically a bunch of teenagers and /20-somethings stay behind. And it basically, this hurricane hits and it gets completely flooded and isolated and they lose power. And then immediately it goes Lord of the Flies and they start kind of forming tribes and killing each other. And so it's just all about how this terrible thing goes down and how everyone kind of goes feral right away. And it's done as a series of interviews where it talks to different people that were involved with this incident. It's kind of like a living document of like, let's interview people that were there at the scene. And it's pretty fun and pretty creepy. I'm almost like 2/3 of the way done. And I'm having a good time with it.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
I also saw that you watched 2 movies on Letterboxd that are appropriate to bring up.
Yeah. Are you talking about the Final Destinations?
Final Destinations and The Black Phone and Beau is Afraid.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'd seen Beau is Afraid. That was a rewatch for me. Still love it. I actually kind of went up in my opinion. It's maybe my favorite of his 3 movies. That's maybe a weird
Ari Aster you're talking about?
Yeah, Ari Aster. Yeah. It's kind of the least horror of his 3 movies, but it's just very weird. It reminds me kind of a Charlie Kaufman movie. It was one of my favorite director-writers. It's just very weird and just kind of it's like you're trapped in someone's nightmare. So I really love that. Final Destination, I've been making my way back through them again. I watched the first two. I'm enjoying them a little less than I remember, weirdly. I mean, like especially like the second one, I remember liking a lot, and that opening scene is incredible, and then kind of loses steam pretty quick after the traffic jam. That was the other one I watched. Oh, Black Phone. I'd been meaning to watch. I never caught it in theaters, and I thought it was pretty well done. I thought kind of well shot, kind of a fun, creepy vibe to it. It really kind of goes there in a way of the child kidnapping and what he's going to do to these children he kidnapped, in a way that I don't think most horror movies go. So I really thought that was effective. Then finally, I have a little update for you guys. Today, I ran into the bathroom ghost again.
All right. My friends are going to be so excited.
Yeah.
Evan, tell Tristen a little bit about the bathroom ghost.
My face is saying it all right. I'm like, what bathroom ghost?
At my theater, a couple weeks ago or a month ago now, I was up in the men's restroom on balcony level, and one of the sinks started like going off like continuously for like a little over a minute, and then it like shut off by itself. And I was completely alone in the bathroom. So now I'm sure that the bathroom's haunted. And today I went up to the same bathroom, and the same thing happened, and the sink went off for a full minute or so continuously, and then shut off as soon as I was ready to leave again. So,
girl, this ghost is cruising you.
Yeah, 100% a cruising ghost.
So ghost is confirmed at this point.
Spectral dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's I was real excited when it happened to tell you guys. So I was like, oh good, we're recording today, and I can tell you about my ghost friend that I ran into again.
How
about you, Matty? What have you been up to this week?
I've actually done a bit this week. I started listening to a podcast called the Hello Sydney podcast, which is hosted by a woman named Sydney who goes by horror_chronicles on TikTok. I've been following her for a while and just started listening to her podcast. It's great. It's kind of like ours, but it's just her, and she recaps horror movies. I also finished the first season of Evil. So, Evan, if you want to have a spoiler discussion about that later, we can. I'm excited to keep going.
Okay.
I also started watching Dan to Dan. Has anyone here watched Dan to Dan?
I've heard a lot about it, but I haven't seen any of it. I've seen little bits and pieces.
What are you saying?
It's an anime. It's on Netflix. It's based on a manga. It's called Dan to Dan. It's kind of like a comedy, sci-fi horror anime. Very X-Files-esque. Tristen, you would love it.
You just want to watch it for the hot granny character. That's the only reason
I was going to say, Tristen, you would love the hot granny.
You just like hot bitchy girls with like glasses that like do this.
There is a hot granny in it. She looks like she's 20. It's great.
She's like 20 with silver hair and like a fucking crazy banging rack, right? She's just shape. Yeah. Just shape.
So I started watching that, and I'm going to keep watching that. I also watched a French-Canadian movie, so it's French language, but made in Canada, called Humanist Vampire Seeks Consenting Suicidal Person, and it's amazing. It's fantastic. I recommend everyone watch it. It's very much the sort of movie I like. It goes into its own vampire lore in really like cheeky ways. There's a vampire dentist at the beginning of the movie, which you don't get to see a lot. So I really loved that movie. I cannot recommend it enough. I'd been wanting to see it for a long time, and I finally was able to sit down and watch it. It's on Shudder, and I think it's on Amazon as well, maybe. But that was it for me this week. How about you, Hannah?
So we had a friend over who had not seen Longlegs, and I said, this cannot come to pass. So we all watched Longlegs together again, and I didn't log it on my fucking Letterboxd. God damn it. Did you even watch it if you didn't put it on your Letterboxd?
No.
I have not watched it yet. I keep meaning to.
Oh, it's great. It's really scary. It still scared me.
Letterboxd is basically Goodreads for movies.
Yes.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's exactly that.
Yeah. And the snappier you can make your little review, the better.
I feel like I'm just going to learn so much just by being in this space for just being a fly on the wall.
Oh, you will learn so much useless information, Tristen.
I can't wait.
And then we also watched VHS 94, which was, it's like the other VHSs. It was an amalgamation of different scary stories with one kind of overarching scary story. And I really like the VHS movies. I think they're fun.
How many are
Recommend them.
there? 'Cause
There's a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot. I didn't
every
know
time
there
I
were that
think
many.
you've seen them all, there's another one that
Yeah.
you bring up, and I'm like, oh yeah, there's that one too.
Yeah, there's VHS 94 and 99, which I saw
Wow.
last week. But I was kind of busy this week, so I didn't get to watch a whole lot of stuff.
It says there are 7 of the found footage films, 2 spin-offs, and 1 miniseries.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Mm,
Okay.
a lot.
mini series, huh? All right, Tristen, have you watched anything scary lately?
That sounds fun, what you just talked about. Here and there, nothing too crazy. We went and watched Companion, which is not so much horror, but just suspenseful, right? There's definitely some some weird feelings. And so I guess for me, that's scary enough to get started. But it was really good. I enjoyed that. It sounds like y'all were talking about that recently. I
Yeah,
think.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then also in the same vein of kind of like where I end up being is I like to be in a place where at least if I'm scared, like I'm laughing, or if I'm like in a suspenseful space. We're watching the Fallout series, the live action series on Amazon Prime, which has just been super good, but also like it's creepy or like it's very
there's some
unseemly.
zombie adjacent stuff, almost.
Yeah, and just like evil, right? Like
Yeah.
this idea of like maybe not so much evil, but just like true human instinctual stuff where that in itself is scary versus like it being like something like ghostly. There's definitely like the abomination side of things that can be really creepy or off-putting, I guess, to say lightly. But yeah, I've been enjoying that.
That's great. Well, Tristen, now is the time when we get to know you a little bit better in terms of horror. Now, you said you don't love horror and you don't consume a lot of horror. Is that right?
Yeah, I guess I would say like a lot of my tastes with stuff, I get into like really strange like subsects of things. Like if I watch horror, I do kind of enjoy horror, but it has to be like very specific. Like things that make you think, right? Like I don't want to watch like pretty standard, like mainstream. Like I don't want to watch Saw. I'm not even sure I've ever watched a Saw movie before, but it wasn't my thing. Japanese horror is really fun, really cool. It's very psychological. I've enjoyed watching the few Japanese horror films that I've seen, and especially ones that are more like if there are horror films that are like campy, like what is this film we just watched today? Grafted. Then it definitely like strikes a chord with me where I can find like the attachment piece that like tickles that thing that makes me kind of it makes you tick, which is like laughter or like twisted type of shit like that. So and then also like I love a good campy like 80s horror film, like the worse the better. I just want to laugh my ass off. Very like Mystery Science Theater 3000 level horror films. Can see the zipper on the back, big shoulder pads. I feel like Sleepaway Camp is a series kind of like that. I never watched it, but I've heard a lot about it. What was what's the really gay
Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Yeah,
Yes.
I could watch that 1,000 times.
That's like high
1,000
on my
times.
list to cover here.
Yeah,
Yeah, we'll cover that someday.
Yeah, just stuff like that is like kind of where I get in with what I would preferably like to watch as horror, but I find myself in my older age just kind of being open to watching things and just like pushing myself through it. So,
Do you have a favorite horror movie?
nothing that like really comes to mind right now. Honestly, like I said, I think the Friday the 13th is just so overly gay and just out of control. Like it's just ridiculous. Like it's like horny, it's like beefcakey. There's like it's just such an allegory for like his latent homosexuality he's scared to express, right? Like it's just so funny. I think that is probably the thing that sticks out my mind the most off the top of my head. But I also watch the Japanese horror film Houseu pretty much every year.
That's
I
so
think
good.
I think I have you to blame for that.
You
Like
definitely do.
it's an
I
addiction.
watched Houseu with Matthew for the first
It's
time.
a sickness. I can't let it
Great.
go. I own Houseu clothes now. I have like a Houseu sweater, 2 shirts. I'm always forever being like, you should see this movie and like sharing with people. So
I love it.
yeah.
What scares you, both in movies and in real life?
That's a good question. It scares me in movies. Like suspense, the not knowing. Like I just want and that's also true for real life as well. I just want everything like on the table in front of me and just to know it's there. And then also like this idea of like being followed like in the dark, I think is also very upsetting too, right? Like if I were to see like a group of people like heading my way, I might try to either cross the street or run in the opposite direction. Like that would be terrifying. Hearing stories from
when people follow or behind you walking, do you kind of brace yourself a little bit?
there's
Have a little
always
bit
like
of that. Yeah.
yeah.
Where you, like, hear the footsteps behind you and you're like, oh no, is this person going to murder me?
Yeah, no, even honestly, like it's not horror, but it's like this idea that like at any time I mean, in my idea, right? People are like ultimately like instinctual creatures and beings, and like they may lash out and do really weird things. So there's always that question of like, do I need to look over my shoulder? And I guess I frame it more in my brain as like an awareness versus like being afraid, but I'm always like, I'm ready, like a bitch is ready. Let's try me. Let's do this.
Yeah.
So
So would you say your fears are more real world grounded?
Probably. I think sometimes my brain can like get away with itself. Yes, no, actually you're right. They're absolutely totally practical. I was just thinking about the time I was in this cabin by myself here in Minnesota, and I opened the door and it was just pitch black. And I was just like, no, and I just closed the door because it's like I can't see anything out of here. At the worst, it's gonna be like, I mean, I was like, what's going to attack me? But I was also like, is it going to be a bear? Am I going to see something outside of this thing that's like going to come at me?
But it's not like a ghost. It's like a bear or a person.
I mean, who knows, right? Like, I wasn't scared of like a zombie or something, but I was like, yeah, it might be an actual threat to like a regular part of my life, I guess.
So do you believe in ghosts or demons or anything supernatural like that? Cryptids?
I mean, I want to believe in cryptids. I think cryptids and like mysticism and like mythology is what things like that are like what make life exciting, right? This idea that there's like more out there than what we can explain for stuff. It's kind of cool and exciting. But I probably don't believe in it as much as I could or as I should. Or not really should, but like I just don't believe in it probably more than anything else. I think life is like weird and interesting, and like the fact that we're all on this planet right now, like able to like speak and talk, like, and there's like energy in all of us. Like it's very interesting and weird, but I don't know if it translates to like this idea of like different planes of existence that then have us like it's waiting behind. You know what I mean? Like ghosts, things like that. I don't know for sure. It's hard to say.
Do you remember like the first time you saw something as like a kid that scarred you, even if it's something that's like,
oh my God,
like so really weird? Was there like a random movie that like terrified you that now as an adult you're like, oh, that wasn't that scary, but for some reason it really freaked you out?
I don't know what the fuck happened, but like something in the way that I was raised or just my own personality, like I still probably have more anxiety than the average person about certain things, like the what ifs. But like as a kid, I couldn't watch things without getting scared. Like we watched Jurassic Park with my friend there with me, and I spent half the movie with like my hands in my face because I was just so terrified.
Yeah,
that like it was real, and like of course, as like a 10-year-old kid or however old, like the news was like, we could clone dinosaurs, it could be real, and I was like, I don't want to die, dinosaurs are gonna eat me, like. Weird shit like this, or like scary characters in a video game. Like when I was 5 years old, just hearing like ominous music or sounds would terrify me and be like, I don't like this. But I think a lot of kids kind of experience that, like they just have an overwhelming sense of dread with certain things, and adults know not to be afraid of it, and kids are just like, right, and you laugh as an adult watching that shit happen. But as a kid, it's very real.
Tristen, you do like video games a lot. Do you have a favorite horror video game?
Honestly, as far as horror is concerned, I think I get more into the enjoyment of like watching someone play horror games than I do like really playing them myself. But I'd say probably like an easy answer is like Resident Evil, especially like I think there's something really fun about Resident Evil 2, just like getting out of the house and like getting into more of like a multi-stage experience of like you're in the streets, you're fucked. Now you're in a police station and you're watching how that police station devolved into chaos. And then I think that's the same one that ends up in the factory too, right? In the two scenarios.
Yeah, at the very end, I think.
Yeah. Like, I just thought that was really cool that had like a multi-stage experience where the first one was like just a mansion. Like it was a little more kind of fleshed out. And yeah, I think again, like I love watching that more than anything else. Like that's a great example of like good horror experience that like, I don't know, it's just different. Like I
feel like playing scary video games is harder too because like when you're watching a scary movie or watching someone play, you can like hide your eyes and it will keep going. But if you're playing it, you have to keep
part of it.
Action moving and you can't look away. So yeah, playing like the little bit of like a Resident Evil I've played is really scary when you're waiting for the jump scare or whatever.
I remember Matthew and I's mutual friend Miguel and I went out to a bar and then
I know him too if it's the one
well you don't know him well enough.
But that's fine if you guys want to claim Miguel. Shout out Miguel.
We've claimed
Miguel.
Miguel.
This podcast.
I also might know a certain Miguel.
Wow.
Yeah, I think everyone here knows Miguel.
Well,
but you don't know him well enough. You don't know him well
the
enough.
The audience doesn't know Miguel.
I know Miguel the best.
The people who listen,
I know Miguel the best,
Miguel.
and I think that's what the audience sees now.
We went to a bar and then we came home and played Slender Man in the dark on a laptop, and that was really fun.
I remember when that came out, that shit was crazy.
Yeah.
It's not as scary now as it was back then.
No, I don't think it
That's the one where you're collecting like the pages, right?
The notes.
Yeah, I love that game. That fucking stupid game. Oh my god, yes.
Scared the shit out of me.
There was something else. I forget.
Five Nights at Freddy's.
I've only watched it. I've never really played it before.
It's just jump scares the game.
Yeah.
Which is great.
Yeah, it's effective.
Would have me screaming for sure. I can't take a jump scare. I just scream.
There was... I think there's just also something weird about playing a survival horror game. It's not about like high score. It's not about like completing, like killing everything. It's not like about like destroying waves. It's about surviving. And so if your mindset is going into like I need to kill everything, it's not going to work. And like I think I never really caught on to that at the beginning of when horror games were like a big thing. So I would just fuck myself all the time and be like, I don't like this. Like, I'm out of bullets. I have a knife. Like, what do I do? I'm going to eat this fucking herb in a fucking gas station bathroom. So,
all right. Well, now I want to play a game.
Hello, fairies. I want to play a game.
So we are going to play Really Scary or Made by a Fairy, a game we have played on this show before. This time, you will have to guess if the title of the horror film is a real horror film or one that I made up. So, Really Scary or Made by a Fairy. Number 1, and we'll start with Hannah. Horror of the Hungry Humongous Hungen.
Really Scary.
Tristen?
that shit's made up.
Evan?
Yeah, I'm going to go made up.
Hannah is correct. That is real.
What the fuck is a Hungen?
Yes,
Yeah,
what's a Hungen?
What's a Hungen?
Hungen is, I looked it up because I knew I would get this question. It's like a voodoo person. It's something to do with voodoo.
What's the name again? Say the title.
Horror of the Hungry Humongous Hungen. Everyone is free to look up this movie at home and learn all about it.
But we're doing it right now.
Oh, of course you are.
The HT on my computer keyboard is broken, so I can't look that up. But if I could, I would look it up.
Or of the hungry humongous Ungun.
Okay, next one. The man in the yellow raincoat only appears when it rains. Let's start with Tristen.
Sounds like a David Bowie song from the 60s.
It's giving like "When the Pawn" by Fiona
Yeah,
Apple.
100%.
It's fake.
Yeah.
It's gotta be fake. It has to be fake, right? I'm gonna say it's not real.
Okay, Hannah,
Not real.
Evan.
I'll go real this time.
Everyone is correct except Evan. It is fake.
It's the meanest way to say it.
I'm gonna try to remember. I'm trying to remember to use the phrasing that you gave us, which is really scary or made by a fairy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah.
and I was pretty strict about that last time. So I'm gonna
Please.
take back all points.
Okay. We'll do better.
Those points I worked for.
The next one is Jesus Christ Vampire Hunter. Let's start with Evan.
Made by a fairy.
Tristen.
Really scary.
Hannah.
Really scary.
Hannah and Tristen are correct.
That really?
What's the
That is
year
a
of
real movie.
creation
Yeah,
for
what is that?
this
It's like
one?
the,
Exactly.
it's like the 80s or 70s or 80s.
Jesus Christ, Vampire Hunter.
Wow. So they got to it first
think.
before Abe Lincoln?
2001.
Yes, 2001.
Wow.
Same thing.
Okay.
I didn't write down when these movies were
Wow.
made.
Can I read the overview?
Yeah, please.
Sure.
Jesus, Phil Caracas, uses kung fu to wipe out a horde of bloodsuckers who attack lesbians.
Oh.
All right. LGBTQ positive.
This is cheating because
Jesus.
Matty is just picking movies he wrote.
Yes.
It's not fair.
Good job, Phil Caracas.
I don't know when this movie came out. I certainly didn't
He
write
has
it.
a lot of nom de plumes.
Okay, next one. Maggot-Filled Wound Symphony, a love story. Hannah, let's start with you.
Did you fucking write that? You wrote that. Okay, that's made by a fairy.
Tristen?
Can you repeat the title again, please? I just need to hear it again.
Maggot-Filled Wound Symphony, a love story.
That was made by a fairy, you lying bitch.
Evan.
Really scary.
Evan, you gotta stop going against the grain.
Never. Who are you, my parents?
I
Hannah and
must
Tristan
dance.
get that point. That is made up. Okay.
I feel like it would have been fine up until you said a love story. Like I would have believed it up until
Okay.
that point. I don't know.
All
There's
right.
something about that.
Okay. Well, I note taken. Duly noted. I'll remember that for next time. Bachelor Party in the Bungalow of the Damned. Let's start with you, Tristen.
That's really scary.
Hannah?
I would say also really scary.
Evan?
See, listen, I think it's really scary, but this game is no fun if we all say the same thing. So I'll say made by a fairy.
Well, this game's a lot of fun for everyone but you, Evan. Because that is really scary.
Yeah, okay.
That is a really scary movie.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Slow Torture Puke Chamber. Let's start with you, Evan.
Can you remind me, is the game really scary or Matty's Tinder bio? Is that the game?
Yes, that is the game.
Okay.
That's actually a different game, but
Okay.
there's a lot of overlap.
Dead.
I'll say really scary.
Hannah?
I've heard of this in a horror movie, Iceberg, I think. I feel like it's really scary.
Tristen?
Can you use the title in a sentence?
Slow Torture Puke Chamber is my favorite movie.
It honestly does feel like it's a newer horror film, so I'm going to say really scary.
You are all correct. That is
Yeah.
a real.
All right.
It's actually a quite famous movie. It's a part of a trilogy.
What's it called?
What?
You
What are
said?
the other
Slow
ones called?
Torture
Yeah.
Puke Chamber?
Yeah, Slow Torture Puke Chamber.
How new
It's
is
the Puke
this?
trilogy. It's
Must be out
it's from a
2010.
genre I believe called puke horror or something.
Vomit
No.
Gore Trilogy.
Oh, not for
Yeah,
me.
vomit gore. There we go.
Why does
Yeah,
it
this-
say it's torture porn?
Never have there
Oh,
been
I guess it
two
makes
words
sense.
I don't want
Yeah.
less to do with than puke horror.
So the next one is Sharkensaw Women's Prison Massacre. Hannah, let's start with you.
Really scary.
Tristen.
I'm mouthing it like a 14-year-old trying to find the word. I'm going to say made by a fairy.
Evan.
Made by a fairy.
This is really scary.
All right.
Congratulations,
I'm
Hannah.
fucking killing it this time.
Sharkensaw?
Yeah, Sharkensaw Women's Prison Massacre. The poster is great for it. Okay, next one. Surgical Mistakes and the Throne of Screaming Meat. Tristen.
I just have to pause for that. That's beautiful. But that's made by a fairy. I feel like that's too fantastical. I love
Hannah.
Fuck. I want to say also made by a fairy.
Evan.
I'll go really scary.
You shouldn't have, because it is made by a fairy.
Ah!
it. That was honestly, I would love to see these turn into like short stories or just like
Yeah.
farce, create like a 2-sentence farce, like overview.
Baby shoes, never worn.
Next, Mexican Werewolf in Texas. Hannah.
Really scary.
Tristen.
Really scary. It sounds too on the nose.
Evan.
Made by a fairy.
Evan still has 1 point. It is really scary.
I feel like the pregnant pause there indicated that Evan knew what Evan was doing.
Yeah. Evan's trying to keep it juicy.
Yeah.
This is the last one. Cannibal women in the avocado... Excuse me.
Okay.
Cannibal women in the avocado jungle of death. That is a tongue twister. Evan.
Do you, are you?
Are you all right?
Yeah. But like, what in the like random word generating bullshit are you doing? This is made by a fairy.
Hannah.
Yeah, you're not okay. It was made by a fairy.
Evan. Or Tristen.
It's giving like salad shooter. You just put some words in there. We're like, bah! Yeah, it's made by a fairy. I love it. 10 out of 10
You
to
are
watch.
all wrong.
What?
No
This
way.
is really scary. That's why I saved it for last.
Yeah.
This is a
Oh my
real
God.
movie.
Say it
Avocado
again.
can
Say
look
the
it
title
up.
again.
Cannibal women in the avocado jungle of death.
Oh yeah, I'd watch this. This
Yeah.
is 1989. Puffy hair.
We'll do an episode.
Oh, it looks awful. I can't wait.
Okay, now let's move on to Similar Screams.
Similar screams.
Where we discuss similar films to the one we just watched, which is basically a body horror. Tristen, let's start with you.
I mean, I haven't watched a lot of body horror. I think
Did it remind you of anything?
well, it starts out and it gives you like these sort of like whispers of what you think it's going to be like. And in my head, I was like, ooh, Death Becomes Her. Like, I can't wait. And I mean, like, I watched the trailer. I forgot about the trailer. I watched the movie and I watched the trailer again. And I was like, oh, yeah, totally. Like, I should have not thought that. But there was a moment when I was like, this feels like Death Becomes Her. And then it went straight out the fucking window. And then I think a lot of people, I haven't watched it, but I get the premise. A lot of people would probably say The Substance.
Yeah, I think that's the obvious one. I think Death Becomes Her is a great
Yeah, that's a good pull.
call.
Mm-hmm.
Because
think some-
I did have that thought as well, but
Yeah.
I forgot about it until you mentioned it.
There's some aspects I feel like, but it completely goes a separate way, like about a third of the way through in my mind.
Yeah. Hannah, what were your thoughts on similar films you've seen?
I don't know if any of you have seen the movie May, but it kind of reminded me of that movie where she's trying to put a bunch of parts together to make a pretty or beautiful whole. And WHOLE. Not
I was gonna say
shut the
it.
fuck up, Evan!
Nobody thought it
No,
was
I
the
did.
W hole.
I did. No.
Yeah, everybody thought it was the H hole.
Yeah. everyone
to make
thought it was the H-hole.
a pretty whole person and
Stop saying it.
somebody's beautiful hole. And she is crazy and cuts out people's body parts and stuff. So it's quite good. Fun movie. How about you, Evan?
Again, there's some just small DNA in it, but a little bit of Carrie, in kind of the main character being an outcast and that dynamic reminded me a little bit. It's pretty different, but there were some seeds of that echoed for me. How about you, Matty?
Well, there were a few. The Substance, I think, is obvious
Yeah.
because I think The Substance is referencing movies like this. Obviously, The Substance wasn't the first movie to be a body horror movie, and
Mhm.
this I feel like is more in line with like the B movie.
Almost
movies
wondered
that
if they
it's based
edited
on.
this to be more like The Substance, or at least in the marketing, or like some of the font choices they were making. I was like, oh, are they doing a Substance thing because that just was popular?
I didn't feel like they
Yeah.
were aping on The Substance that much.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it did come out in New Zealand before The Substance did.
Oh, so just a coincidence kind of thing.
Yeah, it didn't come out in America till January of this year, but it came out in New Zealand a while ago.
Well, they're that far ahead time-wise.
Exactly.
So that's actually the same time.
They're like a year and a half ahead of us.
I think that's how time zones work.
Yeah.
Also reminded me of Face Off, specifically in trying to figure out the rules. And Frankenstein, just because it was very mad scientist-y. Because there's kind of these two mad scientists, our main character, May, and then her teacher, Paul, I think is his name.
The main character, Way.
No way.
Oh my god.
Stop it.
Edit
All
that
right.
out right now.
Let's-
Edit it. Get rid of it.
No, keep it
I'll
in.
edit the part where you say edit it. I'll certainly edit that.
I'm gonna edit this to say, oh, that's a good joke, Matty.
Matty,
I'll edit
cancel it
in
here.
applause.
And move it there.
Now let's talk about this movie. If you look for information on this movie online, there's not a whole lot. But the cast and crew seem to be primarily women, which is great. The director is Sasha Rainbow. This is her directorial debut. She's directed some short films before this and a Placebo music video. Big Placebo fan. And there, in addition to the director Sasha Rainbow, there are two writers. One is Lee Murray, who I looked up and is a pretty prolific horror writer from New Zealand, who's been around for a long time writing horror and won a lot of awards. This is the only film I could see her credited on, but if you look at her social medias, she mentions it, so it's definitely her. And then Mia Mara Mara is a Filipino-born New Zealand filmmaker who also wrote this, and she does not have a lot of credits to her name. She seems pretty young and new, so I think a lot of like up-and-coming talent in this. Now let's discuss our thoughts on the movie. Tristen, did you like it? Would you recommend it to people?
Yeah, I think I liked it. I think it took too long to like get to the point of where it was going. Like you could have put a bow on it and shortened it a little bit. I think as well too, like looking at watching the trailer and like seeing what the trailer like gave me what to expect, and then watching it, I thought all the best bits were in the trailer, and I think the parts that I was excited about for like the idea or the premise of the film didn't always deliver. And so I'd say if someone were to ask me, would they watch it? I'd say, yeah, watch it, but I probably wouldn't show them the trailer because I think the trailer like says it has like big ambitions. Reanimator meets Mean Girls is brought up, and I think those words used specifically gave me like really high expectations. And I think in a way it lives up to it. And then it's kind of meanders in some spots. Like it's strong in some places and it's kind of like all over the place and takes a while to get to other things later.
Evan, what did you think, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, I agree with Tristen a lot about that. I was mixed on it. I thought some of the directing was really cool and clearly a lot of talent there, and like I was visually engaged. I thought there were some like it wasn't just kind of like just like mindlessly directed. I thought there was actual like craft and thought being put into the choices being made. But yeah, I think where it kind of lacked for me was in the script a little bit, where in the middle it does sag to get where it's going. And with the kills and etc., like it just kind of seems like it's repeating the same beat and then it just kind of ends. So that's kind of in general how I felt about it.
Part of what Evan said, though, I think is very true. I forgot to add this in, is like the use of color, like extreme color, it being so lush is so cool.
Yeah.
And like there are some scenes that are just like very, very pretty, like color, like art directed color stories,
Yeah.
which are really neat. The lighting is super cool.
Yeah.
Even that like first shot of like like her house in China,
Yeah.
where it, like pushes in, and that was a really cool.
That's
Just, like,
apparently a
one
very
shot.
famous apartment complex that is
Okay,
getting
yeah.
knocked down.
Oh,
soon.
I thought it was already
Mm.
knocked down, Kowloon Walled City.
No, it wasn't the Kowloon Walled City. I don't
Oh.
think it was. It's a
okay.
it's a place in Hong Kong that even like people, not even, but people in Hong Kong feel that that place is not a great place to live.
Mm,
Yeah,
Okay.
So probably just exterior shots for that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hannah?
Well, I did like it. I agree with you guys that it did meander a little bit in the middle. Of course, I enjoyed the costumes and makeup. Really good. Lighting was excellent. But yeah, there were parts that I think that were kind of weak. And then there were parts that I felt were, really shined through. Especially the very beginning was quite good. Got right into it. I liked that. And I didn't even really mind the ending. I liked it. It's a fun movie. Matty?
Yeah, I liked it. It sounds like I'm more on Hannah's page. I liked it. I do agree that it was slow. It would have been a terrific short film.
Yeah.
Like if it was 40 minutes long, would have been great.
Mm-hmm.
As it is, I think it's good, if not very good, for what it is, which is, a body horror movie about what it's like to be an outsider and be a woman and kind of the mean girl mentality. So I really liked it for that. And I rewatched it a little bit a second time, and I think I will definitely watch it again at some point and maybe like show it to people. Now that we've all talked about our feelings about the movie, let's discuss the plot and get into the nitty gritty. It is spoiler territory.
Warning, you are now entering spoiler territory.
Whoop, 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 whoop.
Whoop. So we open in China, and as I think Hannah said, or maybe it was Evan, the opening is fantastic. The opening scene, we meet a young Wei, who is our main character, and she's with her father in a lab. She's drawing a corpse flower, which becomes important later. We see that both of her and her dad have similar birthmarks on their face, and her dad is testing a skin grafting experiment which is supposed to fix, abnormalities on the skin, it seems.
Regenerative technology or like therapy.
Biohacking
Exactly.
shit.
Yeah, exactly. So he puts some on his face to fix his birthmark, and it looks like it's working, but it starts working too well and ends up covering his mouth and nose. He starts cutting at his face to try to get air, but it keeps healing itself. Little Wei is trying to stab at his face to get air, but to no avail. He suffocates and dies, and then we get the title card Grafted, which we've talked about this before. I love a title card.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And real like impactful font too, like the real bold
Right.
across the screen font.
I was not ready.
I really love the opening too. I thought really effective death. The air stuff was really creepy.
Yeah.
Just like that you can't breathe because your face seals over.
Terrifying.
Yeah, and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, and I don't know, having a kid chopping at her dad's face just so desperately.
horrifying.
That was so scary.
Blood squirting.
Yeah,
Yes.
and blood squirting everywhere. Rough. Very scary. Roof stoof.
Yeah, both me and Alex were just like, this is literally 4 minutes in and we're already like mortified. This is so much. I asked for this.
You did.
Yeah.
So we cut to the future where we find an older May who gets accepted into a university in New Zealand because she is currently in China. She gets a scholarship, goes to New Zealand, and stays with her aunt and her cousin.
I feel like her aunt is like, her heart's in the right place, right? But like, I think her aunt is kind of like a busybody bitch that can't just shut the fuck up and be happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's probably, I mean, it takes two to tango, but that's probably why her like her marriage fell apart. That's why she's always like on her daughter's ass about like, why isn't she doing the things that she expects out of her, rather than just like being happy with where she's at with her daughter. Like, there's a lot of like, the movie has a lot of kind of themes around, I think, like the Asian experience and like the idea of like Asian culture and like a Western frame. And so I think there's a lot of things in what's it called, nuances that I don't get as like a person, but I also understand that like there's some subtext there that's like a thing, right? So I think she's trying as a parent, but I also feel like she's kind of a fucking obnoxious person.
Right. I mean, she kind of alludes to how, like, Wei needs to cover up her birthmark, and Wei needs to, and how her daughter is not as studious as Wei. She's just never seems to be quite happy. And I hate to see that. And it makes me feel like she's not a super great person to be around, probably is not a very nice mom, as indicated by Angela, who doesn't seem to really enjoy her mom being around because her mom just gets on her ass every time she's there.
Yeah, that also might explain some of Angela's personality. Angela's her cousin, who is very mean to Wei, does not want her to be there, and it's very obvious. So Wei starts school. Notably, she goes to school alone, not with Angela, and she meets an unhoused person with facial deformities outside of her school, which, spoiler alert, plays a role later.
Yeah.
Kind of. I thought it would play a more like significant role throughout, but it
kind of the beginning and end. And there's like maybe one scene where it shows her being kind to kind of give you an idea that, maybe Wei's nice to people and general.
Yeah.
That ship has sailed, bitch, but okay.
Yeah. Until she's very much not nice.
Until she's not nice at all.
And now in lecture at the university, we meet who I can only assume is Hannah's favorite character, the Professor, Paul. And one of the very first notes I wrote down was in this scene, and it was just so obvious that the professor and this blonde student that we just met are having sex, because they're like eye-fucking each other the whole time in the scene.
I'm dumb because I had no idea, and Alex was just like, "Oh, they're having sex," and I was like, "No!" Like he like thinks she's really great. She's a star student. Like she's the girl. She's the what's her name? She's the Regina George, right? She's like smart. She knows what she's doing. No, they're fucking. Okay, cool.
And just for the audience at home, Alex is
my boyfriend, Tristan's boyfriend.
The ghost that watches movies with Tristen.
Ghost.
He is white and bitchy, so I think he is again spectral and peers through the veil of time.
I hope he listens to this episode.
Yeah,
I'll get into this section and just
cut out that and I'm just going to him, Matty.
Yeah, I will. I will.
I'll show him to myself.
So the professor Paul is looking for a research assistant, and Eve has gotten 100 on the most recent assignment. So he kind of eyes her to be his research assistant.
Wei got 100?
Oh yeah, what did I say?
You said Eve.
Oh yeah, no, Eve failed sit, right?
Eve failed. No, Eve passes, but because they're having sex.
92%.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Angela fucked it up, and Eve got a 92.
Okay. Yeah, Eve got a 92, and it's very much implied that it's because she's having sex with the professor.
Yeah,
because she got a snap in. That's why.
So Wei, our protagonist, is in line to be the research assistant.
Yeah,
that's obviously what Paul wants.
We also learned that she has her father's old notebook from his research.
That we saw her drawing in at the we saw him looking through in the beginning. This is when we start to see that Angela and her friends are really catty, and they go into Wei's room. They all go to Angela's house where Wei is staying, and they go into Wei's room and like make fun of all the stuff in her room. Wei comes home tries to be friends with them, sits on the couch while they're watching a movie. They basically get up and leave because she's eating ramen with shellfish in it, and one of them is allergic to shellfish. This was all very triggering to me. This was like total mean girl awful stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's just this general idea of like going against the grain, right? Like it's not so much that like she's like eating, like they're all eating popcorn and they're all like very much in that same space to like speak the same like shared cultural language, not just like English, because she can speak English. She's just not like
New Zealand.
She's not like them. She's not like them, and she's like slurping up a bowl of like fucking prawn soup. Like, that made me laugh. There were some times in this movie where I was just like, it's not super campy, but that shit made me fucking crack up. Like, this is so fucking awkward and hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and then she tries to bond with them by going to a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, she wants to take them to a meal.
Eating traditional Chinese food, which is
chicken feet.
Bad move. Yeah. Which she says, Angela, you love chicken feet.
Yeah.
I know this about you. And Angela's like, I never said that.
Yeah.
I went to a restaurant where I was working with a Chinese family for trying to teach their young son a little English because they wanted him to get, they're very wealthy and they wanted him to get a little English exposure. And they just one day said, we're going to dim sum. And they put a plate of chicken feet in front of me and watched my ass. And I was like, bet. And I ate them chicken feet and it was good.
Yeah.
It's not bad.
I hear they're good. The idea and the concept of eating a chicken's foot is terrifying, but they're supposed to be really good.
I did it, and it was the sauce was super great, but there was no meat to be really had. Like, I have to say that.
Yeah.
But I'm a white person, so sorry. But the char siu looks bomb.
I think everything we say in this has to say, but I'm a white person, sorry. Like, everyone at this point, the next 10 minutes.
I'll just make that the title of the episode.
Yeah. I'm a white person, sorry.
So we go back to...
So I don't have a race.
Oh my God, Siri.
All right, we're done.
Keep it in.
It's over.
Keep it in. Keep it in. Keep it in.
Siri just told me she didn't have a race.
But that's like Siri voice number 1, which is clearly like a black woman. Like, just to be very clear, like current default Siri is a black woman.
Yeah, for real.
I also know because she is also my Siri. Hey, sis.
Hey.
So we go back to the professor, who we learn will be losing his funding for his research in 2 weeks if he doesn't have a breakthrough. He sees Eve, who needs a ride home, and he gives her a ride home, and it's super creepy. Do you guys think that he had a thing for Eve besides trying to take advantage of...
You mean Way?
Way, sorry. Oh, yeah, okay.
It's gonna get more and more confusing as we go through this movie.
Yeah, sorry.
The names thing's gonna be confusing.
Yeah,
but he's being really creepy in a way, right? And you're gonna ask, do you think it's just for the giving her research, or is that what you're gonna ask?
Yeah, if like he was into her, or if you think it was just the research.
My read on it was that is his kind of MO, that he likes, it's a power thing in a way, that he takes these young students of his, these young female students, and grooms them, for lack of a better word, or just mentors them in a very creepy way, just to sleep with them. And I don't know if it has a lot to do with attraction or not, or just more just like he can do it, so he does. This was my kind of read. So I think it's kind of both, what I think.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like it was a total power play.
There's some parts in this movie that I feel like this is a larger thought of, like, there's this need to tell a general story, and it's not, like, the specifics are not necessarily super important, but because of that, like, we kind of get an obscured idea of like what the thought is they're trying to put across. And I think around that time is when you see like all of these little headlines that they're throwing about like Wonder Boy, so and so forth, like did all these cool things, right? Like it kind of tells a story of like who he was as a younger student. And I think, yeah, he wants to like ride the coattails with somebody who is like a younger student, right? But that he can also like use them to his advantage to gain accolades again. But I think it's like this weirder part of the story that's like, not everything is super important in terms of the specifics. It's just like, how does that contribute to the whole story?
Yeah, and then we see the professor having sex with Eve in his office. Wei comes in, and they have to stop. And they see Wei doing an experiment. Right? Is that when this happens?
Sort of. There's a few different things. I think around that time is when... Does she make friends with the girl before or after that?
This is right after this. She makes friends with Jasmine.
Jasmine, which is the
who gets hired as another lab assistant.
Mm-hmm.
I think before that is like one of the best parts of the movie, which is, and I have it in my notes as dead baby pig montage.
Oh,
do you remember that?
Yes, did see the fetal pig.
Fetal pig is shown a few times. There's a slice in the fetal pig. There's all this like really cool iconography that happens, including like Angela getting mad at Wei's presence and like forcing her to like be closer involved like with her Chinese self that she does not want to fuck with because it reminds her of like her mom, and it like takes her away from like being normal, right? So she gets pissed, she takes the incense, she fucking jams it in the pork, right? Like all this crazy stuff happens, and it's just like very graphic and very sharp. And I just remember that being like a lot, but it was also probably my favorite scene in the movie. Like there's just all this stuff that happens, like heavy research, and Wei's trying really hard and she's exhausted, and like Angela's getting pissed and all this stuff. So
yeah, right after the bus ride, Wei figures out the thing about the corpse flower, that the corpse flower is the missing ingredient to her father's research, which she finds a flyer on the bus when she's talking to Jasmine, and goes to the flower, and she takes a sample and she mixes it with the formula that they've been developing, cuts a part of her leg off, like skin, kind of shaves the skin off like a chocolate swirl.
Yeah.
Nasty.
And it's really gross. However, it works, and she's able to graft that skin. Eve takes a picture of Wei and the professor in a compromising position because Wei is showing the professor where
Like
she
the
cut off
leg,
her skin,
yeah.
which is on her leg, and it looks like he's about to go down on her. And then it's around this time that we get the idea that Paul is planning on stealing the research as his own.
So Angela gets really pissed at Wei, and we see that montage that Tristen just talked about, where she jams the incense in the chashu, and Eve, who volunteers to take Wei home at some point, takes Wei to a secluded area and then starts kind of fucking with Wei, telling her that she looks ridiculous because Wei has started becoming a little bit more confident because she's doing this research and is continuing her father's work. And she has started wearing some makeup. And that cunt tells her that she looks ridiculous, which I hate her. She's so mean, but so cunty. Angela, so we see that later on that Angela has messed up Wei's shrine to her father, and this causes a big fight that surprisingly ends with Angela being stabbed in the eye with a chopstick, and now she's dead. So what did you guys think about that kill?
I thought some good effects, some good prosthetics and stuff like that. Considering I can't imagine this had a huge budget. I thought I bought all the effects they were going for. And,
me too. We're going to talk about them more in Costume Corner, but I really thought it was quite good. I liked a lot of the FX makeup.
Yeah.
And so Wei says that she's going to fix the situation and bring Angela back. And at first we're kind of thinking that maybe she's going to use it to graft over her eye and maybe make her come back to life. But no, in fact, she pulls off Angela's face, cuts it off, and puts it on her face, grafting Angela's face to hers. And have in the notes that Matty wrote says it's a real face-off situation, which is true.
Yeah.
And now Auntie Ling thinks Wei is Angela now. Angela's body is hidden, and Auntie Ling goes away for a week. And Wei uses this week to go to school pretending to be Angela. And is enjoying having no birthmark, enjoying kind of living her life as this beautiful person who she doesn't think she is. And she goes to school, she pretends to be Angela, but somebody tells her, you have a match, and she says, oh shit. So she slams her fingers in a locker so she doesn't have to play. Angela goes, fake Angela, really Wei, goes on a date with her little boyfriend. But as they're making out, and Wei seems to be real into it, Angela's face falls off of Wei. And he is so surprised that he backs away from her and falls off of a cliff. Also, Matthew put, what is the geography of this gorge area? That was very, very surprising.
We see Wei almost fall off a cliff that's at the bottom of another cliff, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Because this guy falls off a cliff that's at the top of where Wei was earlier when Eve abandons her.
Also, there's like a random car at the bottom that he falls on, which was a really
like
cool
a-
shot. But it was like
Ice
an
cream
overturned...
truck? Is it an
Yeah,
ice
like
cream
a abandoned
Like a
truck,
van.
ice cream
Yeah.
truck. Yeah.
Yeah,
so weird.
they showed it earlier. They must have just had access to it and really wanted to
Okay.
film it.
That was a cool shot when he was laying on it. But
It was,
I
yeah.
was like,
it
where
was
did that
neat.
car come from?
Yeah.
I really like, I want to say, the fun of these kind of face-off movies
Mhm.
is seeing an actor play another actor, kind of.
Love it.
And I always love that. Of like, yeah, you're this person pretending, so you're the actor playing Angela, pretending to be Wei being Angela. Like, I think that's always a fun trope in these things. It's kind of like a body switching movie where you have to have one actor pretending to be another actor in their body. I always think that's a
Yeah.
lot of fun.
Yeah.
Angela was crazy at that. She was so good.
She
was
that
really
actress
good at
was
it.
off the hook.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And so Wei realizes that she can't find her notebook. And we know that that Professor Featherstone, or Paul, is translating the notebook from a friend that speaks Mandarin Chinese. And he goes to get a sample of the corpse flower. And when Paul tries to figure it out, his friend says that the notebook is crazy. It's, quote, Chinese torture bullshit.
I don't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Is there stuff in there besides the research? Is her dad's fan fiction also in there? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on?
Well, it seems like he's like he's gone too far for science. Like,
Yeah, it's
he's
very the Frankenstein thing of
Mhm.
you've played God, how
you've
dare
played
you?
God,
kind of
yeah.
thing.
And so that's what it seemed like to me. But so Paul tells Wei that he lost the notebook, but also is sure to tell her that as his research assistant, the research that they're doing together and really that she pioneered belongs to him. And so Wei as Angela sees Eve outside in her car waiting for Paul, and pops up at the window looking creepy. She gets a ride home from Eve, and they plan to go shopping the next day. And this, I'm going to talk about this scene later in Costume Corner, but Wei tells Eve that she deserves to get the dress. Wei as Angela. And Eve says, of course I deserve it because she's a cunt. And so after shopping, Wei takes Eve back to her house and attacks her with a curling iron. Eve tries to hide in the pool by staying under as long as she can, but Way watches and hunts for her and drills her in the head.
A swimming pool is a bad place to hide. I'm
I
like,
was
girl,
gonna
the
say-
ripples.
Yeah,
Girl,
no.
she's gonna see the ripples.
And there's
like,
a very short time frame on that, you know?
Yeah, she's
Like, you
gonna
can only hold
see
your
you
breath
later.
so
Yeah,
long.
you can't hold your breath.
I was like, that was
long.
the worst choice. And yeah, the drill stuff was really,
Yeah, I
really
mean the
grossed me out.
squelchy
Yeah.
sound. Oh, so
And like the
rough.
hair getting wrapped up, like the hair got wrapped up
Yeah.
into that drill,
Mhm.
and
That's a great death.
it was real meaty.
Yeah,
It was real bad. I was
super
like, this is not
gross.
good.
The squelchiness in this movie is exceptional because
Yeah.
when she pulled that chopstick out, it was just like blorp. And
Yeah.
then when the drill was done, it was like it kind of bubbled and
Yeah, it
and I was like,
bubbled.
oh no.
It was tough to watch for sure.
And just anytime, that like scalpel was cutting into something, I was kind of cringing a little bit. I thought scalpel stuff really gets me.
Yeah. Dirty scalpel too. Fetal pig scalpel.
Super clean.
Super clean.
Yeah. So after she chases her to the pool, and kills her, she brings her back into her house, and then once again, it's time to switch faces again. So she cuts off Eve's face and then begins to wear Eve and be Eve.
This is where the body thing really came into play,
Yeah,
where it's
you're
like,
like,
that's a
she's
significantly
taller.
different body.
And, 100%. It's very.
Yeah.
It is kind of the face-off thing where you're like, oh, so they're fully the other person now. Like,
Right.
Yeah, because
No
we don't see her
explanation.
cut off like all of the skin on the body.
Yeah.
Even then, you'd also need like some muscle and
Yeah,
some
or just-
bone.
Mm-hmm.
It's just height too. I think there's like a
Yeah.
height difference too.
Yeah, you need
like,
to insert some bones in there.
yeah,
to make
you
it
had to really
taller.
stretch, or like suspend disbelief on that. But you're like, oh, whatever. That's the rules of the movie. Is you switch bodies when you switch faces. I really liked the Eve actress. The way she acted when she was Way, I thought was really funny.
Excellent. Really
Yeah,
good.
I really just really over the
Really
top and
good.
campy, and I thought really fun. So I really enjoyed that. At this point, kind of things are going crazy. There's kind of this older woman neighbor with a little yappy dog who's kind of nosing around that Way as Eve goes out to confront. That's when we see her act kind of all real bug-eyed and crazy.
Bicky, the MVP. Bicky,
Yeah.
Bicky.
Great accents. We should point that out. That some
Vicky.
great
Vicky.
New Zealand oi noi accents in this. It's some real great times. At this point, the police also start to come around. I did lose a little bit of track about who they thought was missing, because they come looking for, basically thinking that Way's missing at this point because she's been gone for a while. Also, like Josh, the boyfriend, has been discovered. So they're
It
like,
is not
what's going on
clear
there?
what the police are looking
Or like what
for.
they know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like Way's kind of off the board at this point. Like Way as herself has kind of not been around now for a couple days at least. So I'm like, is the implication that they think she's the one that's dead or missing? But they're kind of nosing around now, so that that's kind of like heightening the stakes. At this point, now that Way is Eve, she goes back to Paul and kind of uses that to sleep with him and seduce him. But right after they have sex, she like fully needs to take like a scrub bath because she's kind of disgusted with herself, which I thought was interesting. Yeah, another thing I really liked was that at this point she's trying to juggle the three personalities: the Way, the Angelica, and Eve, and she has all three of their cell phones, and she's labeled them with tape to be like, who's who and whose phone do I need to answer and who do I need to text to keep up the ruse. I thought that was really fun.
There's a great shot with those cell phones too,
Yeah.
that give you some exposition where it just shows words,
Mhm.
and the words are just telling you what's going on in the plot. And they did that before earlier with the professor, where he's just looking at the screen and you see words that tell you everything he's learning. I appreciated that. It was very simple, but very
Yeah, that's some
very
good visual
well done.
storytelling. I thought that was a highlight of the movie. Was the director was telling a story visually in a good way. The professor guy has kind of figured out the formula at this point. He's kind of cracked it, and he's grafted we see him graft like two little like skin cells together. Again, some really good effects, I thought, that really held up for a, again, low, not a huge budget movie. He kind of figures out that Way is pretending to be Eve at this point. I don't remember exactly how, but he kind of senses something's off.
He
with
sees
her, right?
that Eve, or Wei as Eve, steals his vial. And he notices like the door to where the vial was is open, and he looks and it's gone. And because he knows that Wei has this knowledge too, so I think that's when he figures it out, because he says Wei like in an angry voice, and then we see him show up at Wei's house in a little bit.
Then once again at this point there's kind of a time limit on how long the face off lasts, and then before it kind of starts to peel in a really gross way. She's kind of getting flaky at certain points of the movie because the skin's falling off, so her Eve mask basically falls off completely, and you're left with Wei now with her dyed blonde hair to match Eve. And it's at this point Jasmine, the other friend, shows up and kind of to figure out what the hell's going on and where all her friends are. We get a really kind of good creepy scene of Jasmine going through the house. She goes into the kitchen, she opens up the fridge and has this big shocked reaction to something that we don't see right away, but we know it can't be good. And at this point we get a good callback to one of the earliest themes of this podcast, which is
Black
people getting
Christmas.
suffocated with plastic. She goes full Black Christmas and takes a hunk of saran wrap and covers her mouth and completely suffocates her. Kind of in a callback too, now that I'm thinking about it, of the kind of the father and the skin going over his face and suffocating him. Kind of a similar kill. And then now Jasmine's dead. We're kind of in the end game. Because now Professor Paul shows up again to confront Wei. He goes into that fridge and finds... You put here, Matty, that it's Jasmine's face, but I didn't necessarily know whose face it was.
It's Eve's face.
Eve's face, right? Okay, yeah. So she finds a faceless head in the fridge, plus some other body parts, right? Like she has some,
and it's arranged artfully with like fruit around it and stuff.
Oh,
it's so creepy. Yeah,
like a turkey in the middle of a Thanksgiving table. She's arranged this human meat. So Paul finds all this. They have a big confrontation, kind of a fight through the house. She's able to knock him out and basically kind of knocks him out and ties him up to a table, if I remember right, or like just kind of like gets him unconscious. And then she gets out her little like science experiments and starts to do what happened to her father, which is kind of like overload the cells with the syringe formula, whatever, and then she like grafts it to his face, and it starts to grow too much, and now it's going to cover his face. But right before it's like covering his mouth, she like sticks a straw in his mouth just so he has like the tiniest little bit of air to breathe, which I almost thought was almost creepier than
really scary.
No air, just like having the idea of having to breathe through just a little tiny straw only. Really suffocating, I thought. Really effective kill. And then, now the neighbors come around. The neighbors have called the cops, and the cops show up. She's hiding from them. She kind of makes a run for it. And then now she meets the unhoused person again, and kind of goes to hide with him, like kind of right next to him under his blanket. But because she has like the grafting, like whatever she's done, basically the experiment, we kind of see a quick cut of like their like faces are gonna start to merge under that blanket, and that's kind of the end. And then we cut to a little bit in the future. The aunt's back now, kind of clearly in mourning. She thinks she sees Wei, but it's just some random woman that kind of looks like her from behind. So it's not her. But then she's out in the streets of New Zealand, and we see that Wei has completely merged with the unhoused man in this really creepy shot of like, it's kind of both their faces, but also like you can kind of see Wei's hands in the makeup, like under his chin, which I thought was really cool. Just a real like, Cronenberg horror show of like two bodies merged together, and they're kind of stuck like that now. And that's what we're left with. Boom, title card again, Grafted.
I love beginning and end title card.
Yeah.
adds an entire star for me.
Yeah. I really love that. And then we get a short little kind of during the credit scene of cutting back to the neighbor, and not much happens. It's just like the neighbor with her dog.
She was
With the
complaining
dog.
about the dog the entire
Oh,
movie.
that's right. Yeah,
And
the
then
neighbor's
at the
complaining about the dog.
end, she
She's like-
ends up with the dog.
With the
ends up
dog,
with
is like,
the
look at
dog.
her face.
That's one of my
Um,
favorite scenes, I would have to say.
I did
Yeah, I
like
think it's
that.
one of the
'cause
funniest things.
You do
Just like
think,
her-
like, what happened to Bicky? And no, Bicky got a nice new home
Bicky's
where
good.
people were not killing each other.
Yeah, with her
She's
dog.
just in love with him. She's just so
Yeah.
happy.
Well, Tristen, now I want to take you somewhere you've never been before,
Oh no.
and that is Hannah's costume corner. Hannah's costume corner.
All right. So, the costume corner.
And you can participate in this as well, Tristen.
Yes, please do. So, Kyle Callahan did the costumes. And the makeup designer was Tracy Henton. I tried to look up other costumes that Kyle Callahan had done, but I didn't find anything on the internet regarding Kyle Callahan. But he was clearly very intentional in a lot of his choices with the costumes, especially with Eve. Her costumes all were excellent and all had pastel tones and are so Regina George and so cunt. Especially the first outfit that we see her in. She's just in this kind of, I think is it like a vest and a collared shirt? And she looks like a mean girl. She just does not look nice. Her makeup is also very on trend, very clean girl. Looks like she drinks that viral Dior pink blush. She's very almost kind of dewy and very effortless. I like that we see her pastels versus Way's color palette, which are much more earthy tones, much more dark, a lot more kind of, I want to say the style of her clothes is much more frumpy. I also enjoyed the other girls' costumes. Also, they contrasted with Way's style, was very frumpy. Angela's outfits were very playful, very fun, lots of cute hair, accessories, and jewelry. And especially when we see Way pretending to be Angela, we see kind of the intentional put on of this of Angela's personality.
Can I just let the audience know at home that Tristen is doing fantastic movements and reactions all throughout this episode, which is such a shame that no one can see.
Yeah.
Like, my hands are up because there's just, Hannah's going over so many things that I agree with and I have a lot of feelings about. Like, it's just so funny to see, like, not only do the actors do a great characterization of, like, how Way would try to mimic both as a person, but then, like, the style, the idea of, like, this is what me as Way thinks this person would wear. And even when she wears, like, the gorgeous, beautiful dress, she's still wearing these ugly ass, like, Mary Jane flats that look so crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
I like some like good acting of like she can't walk in the shoes too. I thought that was a nice
That was
moment
fantastic.
where she's like wobbling down the hall because she's not used to it.
And they're called sneaker pumps.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah. So those
God.
those were an insane trend for a long time. I did have a pair of them. The makeup in this movie was very cool. And I want to point out that we could tell it was Way behind their faces because they used the makeup to keep her teeth the same.
Yeah.
And
interesting.
I noticed that as well too.
Yeah.
Like, regardless of which character it was, she still had that like same telltale, like kind of bigger tooth with like that edge on the front of it, which was crazy.
Yeah. It was really cool and very intentional. Loved it. The makeup in the movie was just fantastic and all looked very real. It only looks like CG was used for the parts where the graft was like crawling up the skin.
Yeah.
It looked like they used a lot of prosthetics, and I appreciate the use of more practicals. Tristen, what did you think about Eve, Angela, Jasmine, and our girl Way?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of like vibe and kind of like the creative choice of how every character kind of was built up to be like their own persona, their own style. Like Angela, definitely very playful, very kind of like young urban, a little hip hop, right?
Yeah.
And then like Way's perception of what that means is like a scary ass sneaker pump with like a sports bra over like a collared shirt, looking insane with like cute little pigtails. I was like, this is a fucking train wreck. Like half of the movie for me was just me being in anxiety of like having to watch her try to be this person in the space when we all knew that it wasn't working. And like I hate that feeling. So much of this feeling was me just uncomfortable because I knew something was dreadfully wrong and it was going to get worse and worse. And like the makeup peeling was like a weird sort of symbolic thing of like the facade, like Way's stuff just falling apart more and more and peeling, right? Like the facade is tearing down.
Yeah, this worse. Kind person that she used to be that cared about unhoused people is now kind of giving way to her vanity, which I really thought was expressed super well in the makeup.
Why did the blonde hair stay on her head? When she turned into Eve, she got blonde hair on her head.
She dyed it, didn't she?
She dyed it.
I missed that.
Yeah.
Because then I saw the hair on the head in the fridge. I'm like, is this just really bad continuity? What is going on?
No,
I missed
she dyed it.
Okay.
They showed a box of dye.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes a lot more sense because I was really suspended in disbelief with the rules there, but now I don't have to suspend as much.
Yeah.
I also kind of think there's maybe, I don't know if it's interesting to kind of think about because I don't know about the Filipina writer, but like I feel like there's so much like homage paid to like the Asian experience in like a Caucasian like nation. And I think there's maybe part of that kind of plays out in terms of like how Wei perceives Eve, right? Like Eve is like beautiful, like she looks like the girls in ads, like she is like the apex of beauty as far as like the society she's in is concerned. So like she gets to the point where like even she gets to be like the prettiest girl.
Yeah, and that's like pointed too because they keep cutting. They pass by a few times that billboard that's like this beautiful makeup ad of like a white blonde woman that's like a model that looks very much like Eve. So that is kind of the ideal, especially maybe is making a commentary of Western standards of beauty versus, you know, other cultures or what they consider beautiful.
And I really like how much they placed Eve in pinks. I thought that was fantastic. And especially that pink dress that she had to seduce, or that she was going to use to seduce Paul, and that eventually Wei ends up wearing in this very awkward way. And it was, I don't know, I just loved it. Very, very beautiful, intentional choices, and loved the costumes and makeup in this movie.
Yeah, and I thought this movie does the similar thing to what The Substance does, where it's very heightened. It's not necessarily anything that, you know, they don't look like just normal your world, but you buy into the reality because it's so heightened and it helps you buy into the kind of crazy science and crazy body horror of it all. Is because everything's so heightened. I thought you buy into the whole world a little bit more.
Right.
Well, now let's recast this movie with Muppets.
It's time to play the music.
It's time to light the lights.
It's time to cast the Muppets in this
horror film tonight.
Well, let's start with Wei. What did you all think?
I know nothing of the Muppets in a heavy way, so I'll just listen for this one. Wei's aunt might be Janice. That's all I could really say.
Okay, I could put Janice there. I put Janice in as Eve, maybe just because of the long blonde hair thing. That worked for me, that she kind of would be the stuck-up blonde girl. The choice is, where do you put Miss Piggy out of all the female characters? And at first I had her as Wei, but I don't think that fully fits.
No.
I think Angela is more than Miss Piggy.
Yeah.
I think that fits better. And also because Wei isn't in it as much as, like, you know, as when she becomes the other two. I think it'd be more fun to have ex-Muppet playing Miss Piggy playing them.
You wouldn't have Eve as Miss Piggy and the professor as Kermit?
I did think about that, But then I also wanted to put Professor Honeydew as the professor.
Oh my god.
Just kind of 1-to-1. Just a nerdy, professor guy. So then I changed it, and I made Angela Miss Piggy. For Way, I put Gonzo. I just think he would murder people to try to fit in because he kind of has that outcast thing.
Yeah.
So I put Gonzo as Way.
And trying to get those other people's faces over that nose would be impressive.
Yeah. I don't know if you would. It'd be funny if they
That
just
would be a good gag.
have her the skin just Miss Piggy face over the Gonzo face loosely. Would be good. I the other one I had for sure was that the unhoused man would be Oscar the Grouch, living in a trash can, and then at the end, Gonzo would merge with him. Yeah, I think that's pretty obvious. For the ant character, I didn't have really anyone, so I was gonna go maybe outside the Muppets and go with the grandma character from Nanaland, the who's that wonderful girl? Yeah, I think throw her in there. She's like an ant character, so let's put her in there. Yeah, so those are the Muppets I had. I didn't have anyone for Jasmine. But you can, just pick your Muppet. They could be in there as Jasmine.
This
get
is
murdered.
The 4th or 5th or maybe 6th time we've run into the problem where there are not enough Muppets.
Women characters. I know.
No.
I gotta
We gotta start gleaning the movies and stuff like that and really seeing where there are female Muppets.
Just different Gonzos and drag is fine.
Yeah, that's why Gonzo, I think, always canonically non-binary, I'm gonna say.
Okay, how about this?
Anywhere.
Miss Piggy is Eve. Mm-hmm. The professor is Tim Curry.
Oh, okay.
We're allowed to, so Tristen, we're allowed to cast Tim Curry as a Muppet.
Tim Curry as a Muppet.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Is Michael Caine allowed always to be cast too?
Yeah, but I think he'll be the one human. So we also get one human. So Michael Caine can be the one human.
Uh-huh.
Do you have a short list of who these people can be? Do they have to be legendary actors or actresses?
No, sometimes it'll just be people in the movie. We'll say that person gets to stay as the human and everyone else is a Muppet.
Gotcha.
So let's move on to final thoughts. I have 2 things I wanted to bring up that I didn't bring up earlier. One is there's this shot that I just wanted to call out because it's my favorite shot in the film, and it's when Way is Eve and she's in the lecture with Professor Paul, and there's just a spotlight on her, and she's doing sexy moves and trying to seduce him. I think you might have mentioned that, Evan, but I just wanted to call it out because that shot is worth calling out. It's so good.
It's bizarre. I remember it very
Super
much.
Bizarre. Really, I felt like it fit in the tone of the movie very well.
Yeah. I think so too.
The other thing is, I would have liked this movie more if it was a musical, and I think it should be a musical, and someone needs to make it into a musical.
Yeah. Have you read or heard that they made Teeth into a musical?
Oh, now that you're saying that, I think I did.
Yeah, it's the same guy that did Strange Loop, which was excellent. He adapted Teeth into a musical, and I'm pretty sure that I think it was off Broadway. And I think the first 5 rows are a complete splash zone, and they give you a poncho, it's a Blue Man Group show. And you get covered in blood. So if it ever tours, we'll all go to that.
Hell yeah,
we definitely will. Does anyone else have any final thoughts?
There was a shot outside with Way when she was chasing Eve with the drill. And she just stands still with the drill in her hand.
That is a great shot.
And it was a wonderful shot. And I just wanted to call attention to that.
Yeah, I think, like I said, overall, I think a lot of good, clever shots that clearly shows craft. And I'd be excited to see another movie by this director.
Yes.
Yeah.
See what else they have. Yeah.
I thought the director did a really good job of doing big things with not a lot of money. You could definitely tell that this was a company that didn't have a lot of money to do, but they used practical effects and just staging things appropriately to kind of show strengths elsewhere. The whole chase scene with the cops at the end, it was very clear they had maybe two cars, right? There were definitely lights that were happening, and the way they shot it made it feel risky and dangerous, but it also was like very sparse too. So I just liked that aspect of it.
Yeah, the movie never felt cheap to me, considering, again, that it wasn't like a major studio release or anything.
Right.
Yeah.
It felt, like a full movie.
Yeah.
So good job.
Well, Tristen, please come back and visit us. Sorry we kept you so
Absolutely.
long.
That's okay. No, this is really fun. Thank you so much for having me. I would love to come back anytime you want to talk about stupid stuff or campy stuff.
We'll have you on for the Nightmare on Elm Street 2 episode.
Definitely that. Anything like cyberpunk, or I haven't watched, I know people love it. If you guys have discussed it before, Videodrome is like something that people discuss.
Good movie.
I haven't seen that.
We haven't discussed that.
So things like that, things that are like really 80s or just like throwbacky and creepy. I'm your guy.
Well, thanks for listening, everybody. And until next time,
Bye.
bye. Just to say bye.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you for listening to Scary Fairies, a podcast where 3 fairies discuss scary movies. You can write to the fairies at scaryfairiespod@gmail.com. Tell us what you think of the show or ask a question, and they will read it on air. Visit the website at scaryfairiespod.com and like and follow us on Instagram. We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please share this episode with others who may be interested in listening to the Scary Fairies discuss scary movies. See you next week in the forest.